Shulam Aleichem, everybody. Today we're up to Yirtzeh Hashem, Daf Yodalid. And we start from the Mishnah, Daf Yud Beis by the Mishnah. Elu Devarim Asurim Limker Lo Eved Kechavim. These are the items a person is not allowed to sell to a guy. Which means we're not just talking about over here on their festival. We're not just talking about 3 days before the festival. We're talking about the entire year. You're not allowed to sell these items. It's troivolin, ubenois shuach, uftoitros, ulavoin, betarnigul alovin. Why? We'll define. The Gemara is going to define each one separately. But for now, let's just keep it to the words in the Mishnah. And the reason is because oivdei kechavim are mishtamish. They use these items all year round. L'tzorech Avodah Zarah. So when they buy it, you have to assume they're buying it for Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Yoel says, "Muter limker letarnagolav ben atarnagoylin." Even though if he buys a white rooster on its own, then avada that you have to assume it's for Avodah Zarah. You can't sell it. But if he buys it in bulk and it's ben atarnagoylin between other roosters that are red or black, he's got one white one, not a big deal. Then you don't have to assume he's going to use it for Avodah Zarah. B'zman shu b'fnei atzmai, and if you're selling him a tarnagolav and a white rooster on its own. Yeah, an individual white rooster you cut off its finger and then you could sell it to him because in this way, for sure the guy's not going to use it for Avodah Zarah because Avodah Zarah, even Ovdei Kechavim are not makriv mechusar aver to Avodah Zarah. So if you she'ein makriv mechusar Avodah Kechavim, they're not makriv mechusar aver to Avodah Zarah. U'she'ar kol dvarim, any other items, stoman. If a guy comes into your shop, a guy asks you to sell it to him, mutter, it's mutter. You don't have to assume he's going to use it for Avodah Zarah, a perushon, but if he tells you mefurish, I'm using it for Avodah Zarah, aser, it's aser. Rabbi Meir says, another 3 items that are not mentioned that you have to assume, even bestoma, that he's going to use it for Avodah Zarah. What is that? Avdekel tav, a good palm tree, v'chatzav, v'niklas, aser limkar lo'evdei kechavim. We'll talk about exactly what that means. But akaponim, the first item mentioned in the Mishnah is it's troivolin. Asks the Gemara the first question, Daf Yudalid Amud Aleph, might troivolin. What is it's troivolin? Says the Gemara, ternisa. It's ternisa. What is ternisa? Rashi says min erez. It's a type of cedar tree. V'hishita kadam v'Rosh different type of cedars. It's one of the cedar trees. Raminu asks the Gemara astira. Asifo leina lachsen it's troivolin mechsasin b'nais shuach. In addition to Shemitah, to all the minim, to all the types of produce that you're not allowed to work on Shemitah, they or Moisef Chazal or Moisef Alachsen, it's Tervolin Mechsasim and Shuach. It's Tervolin Ternisa. If you're going to tell me it's Tervolin is cedar, Ternisa means to be Shvius, is it true the Chazal Aserd Ternisa on Shemitah? Vatani Malot Nabraisa, Zaklal, the general rule when it comes to Shemitah. What is Aser to work on Shemitah? That's only a shirish, a root that is durable throughout the year. In other words, it doesn't get uprooted by the winter. So the Gemara says, yesh loy kol davar sheyesh lo ikar yesh lo shvius. That's the klal. Anything that its root stays, is durable, b'meshech the entire year, including winter, then there has a din shvius. Right? Now that it's chayra, you have to be mafkir, it can't work your land. V'chol she'ein lo ikar, ein lo shvius. Anything that doesn't have, the root doesn't stay there throughout the winter, doesn't have a din shvius. So oibazoi, ternisa, we know, doesn't have the shurashim, the roots don't stay there for the winter. So if it's tervolin is mentioned, that those its tervolin are included in Isser Shemitah, then it has to be that the shirish, the root, stays throughout the winter. And ternisa we know doesn't. So its tervolin cannot be ternisa. Elom Rav Safra per de arza. What is its tervolin? The Gemara says, it's not ternisa, it's something else. It's the fruit of a cedar tree. What are benois shuach? Benois shuach. These are white figs. Very interesting. These are the white figs also mentioned earlier. Presumably, these are the same white figs mentioned in the Braisel in Shvius, where we talked about just now. A couple of lines earlier, we talked about those are one of the fruits that Chazal were moisef on the list that is also to do schayra on Shemitah, and you can't work it on Shemitah. That's benois shuach. Tosfos over here has a whole conversation about benois shuach. What are benois shuach? Tosfos says there's a medrash rabbah that says that the fruit from the Eitz Hadas that Adam Rishon ate were called B'nai Shuach. They were B'nai Shuach, these figs. And why they called B'nai Shuach? Because Shegarmu Shuach la'Adam. It caused death, which means, they bend over toward the ground. That's why it's called B'nai Shuach. V'ikad the Karla B'nai Sheva. Some people call it B'nai Sheva, which is Shivas Yimei Avelus. That's what caused death. But Al Kapan, Taisa has a whole conversation that it sounds like from there, B'nai Shuach is a very choshev a fruit, right? It's the chait of the Eitz Hadas was done with B'nai Shuach, with Te'enim. So how could it be that a Sifu Alein on Shemitah, they're moisif, as if it's not so choshev, the Chacham had to be moisif it. Yeah, so Taisus comes out, a couple of Turzim. One of the Turzim is there are different types of Te'enim, different levels of B'nai Shuach. Either way, a P'toitrais, the second item of the Mishnah mentioned, is usher to do, is also to sell to goyim all year round is p'taitris. Says the Gemara, Omer Rabba Baruchan Omer Rabbi Yochanan b'p'treiseim shanu. What does p'taitris mean? It means the stems. And it's going on, it's Trivolet of B'nai Shuach. It's going on, the Peira de Arza, the fruits of the cedar tree, and the white figs, they're only allowed to be sold without the stems. But when the Mishnah says they're not allowed to be sold to the goyim throughout the year, that's only with stems. Why? Because you need the stem to use it for Avodah Zarah, right? That's how you beautify. You hang it up as a decoration, so you need the stem. Right? Think of your sukkah, schach. If you want to hang up any fruits in your schach, you need the stem. The stem is the most important part. That's how you connect the string to the schach from the stem. So over here also, the decorating the Avodah Zarah, it's only b'p'toitresei and shanu. Levaina, what is levaina? Of Rabbi Yitzchak Amshim Elakish, levaina zaka. Pure frankincense. I guess different grades, different levels. That's the levaina that they use for Avodah Zarah, and that's the type of levaina you're not allowed to sell all year round. Tana, says the Gemara, we learn from the Braisa, makulan meichel and chavila. If you want to sell them in bulk, Costco, then chavila is mutter. Why? Because when a guy buys in bulk, he's for sure not buying it to be makravet Avodah Zarah, to serve the Avodah Zarah. Obviously, he means to do business with it. He's going to sell it again. The kama chavila, so how much is bulk that you could assume that he's not doing it for Avodah Zarah? It's not less than shleisha manin. Manin is the weight of 100 zuz. So I guess the weight of 300 zuz, that's called chavila. I maybe be afraid that the person, the guy who's buying it in bulk, he's going to sell it to, he's going to do Avodah Zarah with. Says the Gemara, no, that's not a chashash. Amar Rabbi, alifnei mefagdinan. We're mitzvah lifnei iver, which means if you're one step removed, you're selling it to the guy who's going to do an avera, that's osir. Alifnei de lifnei loy mefagdinan. But if you're 2 steps removed, lifnei de lifnei, right? I'm selling it to a guy who's buying it in bulk, and selling it to another guy. I'm not responsible for that. For Tarnagoy Lavan, the Mishnah said it's also to sell a white rooster. Tarnagoy Lami. A guy walks around the market. He says, "Who's got a rooster?" Mutter limkar loy Tarnagoy Lavan. He didn't specify a Lavan. He says, "Who's got a rooster?" Stam. Then you're allowed to sell him a Tarnagoy Lavan. Tarnagoy Lavan Lami. But if he specifies in his pitch, he says, "Who's got a white rooster?" Then also limkar loy Tarnagoy Lavan. Then you're not allowed to sell him a white rooster. None. Mishnah says, he's allowed to sell him a Tarnagoy Lavan when it's ma'urev between Tarnagoyim. Heichadam asks the Gemara, Ilim, to come Tarnagoy Lavan lami, Tarnagoy Lavan lami, afilu bein Tarnagoyim namiloi. If he taka said, when Rabbi Yehuda says, individual, you're not allowed to sell a Tarnagoy Lavan. But if it's in between a bunch of other Tarnagoyim, which is as black and red, then you're allowed to sell. Then you're allowed to sell a Tarnagoy Lavan. The Gemara wants to know what's the case. If the guy is going around asking Tarnagoy Lavan lami, Tarnagoy Lavan lami, so afilu bein Tarnagoyim namiloi, then you're not allowed to sell it, even if you're selling it with a bunch of blacks and whites. Why? Because he's asking for Tarnagoy Lavan. So obviously he wants the Tarnagoy Lavan for Avodah Zarah. Elav the Gomer Tarnagoy Lami. So must be over here when Rabbi is matter to sell Tarnagoy Lavan beinar Tarnagoyim. It's only if the guy asks Tarnagoy Stam, Tarnagoy Lami, Tarnagoy Lami. Afilu achi Rabbi Yehuda beinar Tarnagoyim and if ne'atzmei loy. Well, Tanakama afilu beinar Tarnagoyim nami loy. So here you see from here that even if the guy says Tarnagoy Stam, you're not allowed to sell it to him. At least according to Rabbi Yehuda and according to Tanakam, even beinar Tarnagoyim, you're not allowed to sell it. So how could Rabbi Yoina b'shem Rabbi Zera b'shem Rabbi Zvid, the Ekanami b'shem Rabbi Zera alone, say that if it's Tarnagoy Stam, you're allowed to sell a Tarnagoy Lavan? If the guy asks a Tarnagoy Stam, you're allowed to sell Tarnagoy Lavan. Omer of Nachman Yitzchak, Hochma Eskin Koma Omer Zevazeh. Here we're talking about In our Mishnah, when Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to sell tarnagoyel lovan beinar tarnagoyel, and Tanakama say no, even that you're not allowed to do. That's when the guy said, he specified. He says, I'm looking for a tarnagoyel lovan zeh. I'm not looking for a tarnagoyel shachar. I'm looking for a tarnagoyel edom for red and black. He's given a whole list, and he specified in that list tarnagoyel lovan. That's the problem, and that's the machlokas. But Avada, everybody agrees. If it's just tarnagoyel stam, you're okay. Tarnagoyel stam. If the guy just has tarnagoyel stam, you're allowed to sell him tarnagoyel lovan. Tainam hachi. Rabbi Yehuda emisai bisman she'omar tarnagol zeh lovan. Aval omar zeh v'zeh muter. Yeah? When did Rabbi Yehuda say it's also to sell a tarnagol lovan for a guy? That's only if he says tarnagol lovan mefurish, and that's all he says. But if he says zeh v'zeh, then it's muter to sell it to him. Bein tarnagolim. I feel omar tarnagol zeh. And even if he says tarnagol zeh halavan, yeah, even if he says lovan itself, so if the guy says tarnagol lovan, it's aser because we know he's going to use it for Avodah Zarah. But if we can assume he's going to use it for a different reason, maybe he's marrying off a child, he's marrying off a son, he wants to use it, I guess, the chashav tarnagol, so he wants to use it for the celebration of the wedding, or he wants to be merapa choilo. Then you could assume that he's not using it for Avodah Zarah. Ask the Gemara, what do you mean? It says mafurish in the Mishnah earlier, Daf Ches, that it's aser, even if the goy is marrying off a child. That's only a social gathering. When the Brisa says that it's mutter, we're talking about a social gathering. But mamish, in Mishnah Nesuin, then it's aser, like the Mishnah in Chesam Aleph says. Because then he wants to use tarnagol lovan, and we have to assume he's going to use it to thank his Avodah Zarah. Yeah, he's marrying off a child, he's going to thank his Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara, Tanan, U'she'ar kol advarim stamen mutter u'peirushan aser. We learned in our Mishnah that any other items, right, except for the list that's mentioned in the Mishnah here, right? Any other items, if the guy wants to buy it bestama, it's mutter. And if you're mefarish, he's mefarish in the mechira, I want it for Avodah Zarah, then it's aser, any item to sell my item. My stam, my perushan. What does it mean, stam and a perushan? So I just assume perushan means he's mefarish, he wants to sell to he wants to use it for Avodah Zarah. Gemara doesn't like that. We'll see. Let's say he's buying wheat kernels. He says, give me white wheat kernels. So that's stama. He's not telling you why he wants to use it. It's for Avodah Zarah. So maybe that's stama. Perush nekam lavedes kechavim. And pirush means it's for Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says, Lo stama tzrich lemed damzin, lo pirush tzrich lemed lemes abnina. I don't need this Mishnah to tell me that. Obviously, if he's telling you I'm going to use it for Avodah Zarah, believe him, right? Believe him. You don't need a Mishnah to tell me that you're not allowed to sell an item, any item, to a goy that says I'm going to use it for Avodah Zarah. So it can't be perushan means he's mefarish why he needs it, right? Elo must be stamen dekam chiti. Stamen means I just want plain wheat kernels, and perushan dekam chavras I want white. And what do you say from here? Mechlal the tarnagol afilo stamon and namiloi. So from here you see that the stama by other items is stam, meaning that he's not specifying even the details of the item itself. Forget the usage. Avada usage is avada aser. If he tells you he's going to use it for Avodah Zarah, it's avada aser. But stam means just chitim alone. That's mutter. Mechlal, the tarnagol by a rooster, even if he says stama, it's aser. He doesn't tell you that it's for Avodah Zarah. He says stam. Abazoi, it's a kasha on Rabbi Yoina, on Rabbi Zera, on Rabbi Zvid earlier that says that if a guy asks for tarnagol stam, it's mutter. From this deacon, the Mishnah sounds like it's aser. Says really no, in our Mishnah can't be medayek that way, because the stam in our Mishnah means white wheat kernels. And Perushin the Kamer Lavedis Kechavim. And Perushin means Lavedis Kechavim. You ask me, Perushin what's the Chiddush? Avada. Any item a guy wants to buy and he's telling me he wants to buy it for Avodah Zarah, Avada Tzasser. Sag that when a high gaver Lavedis Kechavim Kaboyi could be, maybe, you would have rationalized, you would have said that this guy really doesn't want it for Avodah Zarah. Ela Meiva Kuda Avik Lavedis Kechavim. He's so attached as Avodah Zarah, the Savar is projecting. Just like I am attached to Avodah Zarah, so he says, maybe I'll say to everybody, I need it for Avodah Zarah, and everybody will dig deep. they'll check their stocks, make sure, check their storages, make sure that the taka don't have it because they want to give it to me, because they also machshav Avodah Zarah. That's why he's saying it, but he's really not intending on using it for the Avodah Zarah. So I would have thought maybe you can rationalize like that and you could sell it to him. Kamashma, no. If he says it's for Avodah Zarah, don't think he's playing games. He's using it for Avodah Zarah and it's also to sell it. That's the chiddush of Perushan in the Mishnah by other items. If he tells it to you, take him at his word. Boy Ravasha, Tarnugul Lovin Ketua Lami. When the guy asks, who has a Tarnugul Lovin Ketua? Interesting. Who has a white rooster that's missing a leg? Mao. Limker lo Tarnugul Lovin Shalim. Can I sell him once he reveals in his request that he's not looking to use it for Avodah Zarah, because Avodah Zarah, Tarnugul Ketua is usher. Can't be makriv for Avodah Zarah. Even Avodah Zarah, you can't be makriv a Tarnugul, a rooster that's missing a aver. So the shaila is, once he says that, can I sell him Tarnugul Shalom? So he doesn't need it for Avodah, so I can sell him now a Shalom. Or maybe he's trying to trick me. He's trying to fool me. He's saying Ketua, but he really wants a Shalom. He knows I'm not going to sell him a Shalom, because it's for Avodah Zarah. So he's saying Ketua, he knows I don't have Ketua, I only sell Shleimim, so I'm going to give him a Shalom, and then he's going to use it for Avodah Zarah. If you're going to tell me that we have to be chosh that he's tricking you, Tarnugul Lovin Lami, V'yov L'shachav V'shakal. What if he asks deliberately, specifically, for a white rooster, and you give him a black? V'yov L'odem V'shakal. You give him a red, and he takes it. Mao, Limker Loi Lovin, can you sell him a white one or not? Once you see that he's taking anything you're giving to him, right, even a red or a white, which is not qualified for Avodah Zarah, so maybe now you can give a white as well, because obviously he doesn't want it for Avodah Zarah. Maybe he's just tricking you. Take you. So we don't answer that. It says the Gemara, Reb Meir Omer, af dekel tav, even a good a palm tree. A palm tree is also all year round. You're not allowed to sell to a guy. Omali Rav Chizda Lavimi, Gemiri. We have a Kabbalah Davodas Kechavim. The Avram Avinu Arba Meir Pirkan Avin. That Masechta Avodah Zarah Avram Avinu had 400 prakim. Imagine that. Why did Avram Avinu have a Masechta Avodah Zarah with 400 prakim? So they bring over here from the Kais Yeshuas in the bottom of the art scroll. He says, because in the times of Avram Avinu there was so much Avodah Zarah that it needed a lot of Masechta, a lot of prakim. You had different types of Avodah Zarah, different halachas. So Mamela, it had 400 prakim. Vanan, but we nowadays, Avodah Zarah is not as common as it used to be. Chamishat, now we only have 5 prakim in our Masechta. Even though we only have 5 prakim, we still don't have clarity on some of the halachas in our Masechta. So Avima said, "My kashalach." We said to Rav Chizda, "What do you mean? What don't you have clarity about? What's the kasha?" What's the Ktani Rav Meir Omer? Rav Chizda said, Mishnah says, Meir says, "Av dekel tov chatzim niklas asalim kalaverik chavim." Dekel tov lemazmin. It sounds like only a good palm tree you can't sell him. Or dekel bishmas abninan, but a palm tree that's gerua, that's not as good, that doesn't produce such good fruits, that you could sell, but not ein moichlam b'mechubel karka. You're not allowed to sell any karka to a guy. So how can you tell me it depends if it's a dekel toiv or a dekel ra, if it's a good palm tree, a bad palm tree? If it's mechuber to the karka, if it's attached to the ground, the halacha is, right, it's pashat the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir says you're not allowed to sell, not Rabbi Meir, it's l'kul alma. Nobody, you're not allowed to sell mechuber the karka. You can't sell any land to a guy in Eretz Yisrael. Amar Lei says the Gemara, Avima said, no, don't. That's not a kasha. My dekel tav, it doesn't mean the actual palm tree. It means peiros dekel tav. It means the fruit, the dates of a good palm tree. Good, delicious dates. Chen maruna peiros dekel tav. But avada, the dekel itself, you're never allowed to sell because that's mechuber lekarka. A goy, you're not allowed to sell karka Eretz Yisrael to a goy. Chatzov, what's chatzov? Kashba. What's kashba? It's also a type of date. Niklas. What's niklas? Ka'asav dima omer v'cham b'yesef kuryote. What's kuryote? A type of fruit. Some of Farshim say it's a type of date also. Different type of date. We learned Nicholas in the Mishnah. We didn't know what the translation of Nicholas is. We still don't know what it is, right? I guess he translated to Abaye. It was the same ambiguous word. He didn't know what it means. So imagine I ask you for a word. What does it mean? You give me another fancy word. I don't know what that means. Abaye is saying, I'm asking what Nicholas in the Mishnah means. You tell me kuryote, but I don't know what kuryote means. It says, Amar Lei, Rav Dime said, Ahani lecho. So, okay, basically I gave you kuryata, you don't know what it means, but I helped you. Abai lived in Bavel, right? He says, when you go to Eretz Yisrael, Amrit lahu niklas. You tell the Bnei Eretz Yisrael, I want to taste some niklas. V'lo yadi. Amrit lu kriyate v'yadi. Right? If you tell them niklas, they're not going to know what you're talking about. But if I just gave you the translation of kriyati, you might not know what it means, but they'll know what it means. And the kamach v'lach, and they'll show you what it is. It's a delicious, one of the delicious dates. Lamaisa, why is it called niklas? So over here they bring, because there was one philosopher in the days of Herod, in the days of the second Beis Hamikdash, the end of the second Beis Hamikdash, his name was Nicholas. He lived in Syria, Damascus, and he would always send these delicious dates, to Augustus Caesar in Rome, who was then ruler over Israel at the end of Bais Sheni. And so, because he always sent it to the Caesar, that's why it was Nikras al Shmoy. It was known as the dates Nicholas. Nicholas's dates, because this philosopher Nicholas, who lived in the times of Herod in Damascus, would always sell it to Augustus Caesar. Would always send it as a gift. That's why it's known as Nicholas. And the Gemara says in Eretz Yisrael we call it Kriyote. Okay, we'll stop over here.